WKRP in Cincinnati ran for 4 seasons on CBS, starting in 1978, and turned a struggling fictional radio station into one of the sharpest ensemble comedies of its era. The writers gave every character a specific comic frequency, and the cast that occupied those roles went on to lives that were funny, complicated, and in several cases cut shorter than anyone would have wished. Here is where they all ended up. Number 1. Howard Hesseman as Dr. Johnny Fever, the perpetually laid-back counterculture disc jockey whose contempt for authority and genuine love of music made him the moral compass of a show that disguised its intelligence beneath layers of absurdity. Born George Howard Hesseman, he was 38 when the show premiered in 1978 and brought a history to the role that went well beyond the actor's resume. Back in 1963, 15 years before WKRP ever existed, he had spent 90 days in jail on a marijuana charge that was eventually overturned on entrapment grounds. A biographical detail that gave Johnny Fever's counterculture credibility, a foundation most performers could only approximate. His first marriage to Catherine Maison ended in 1974, and he married French actress Caroline Ducroc in 1989, a partnership that held steady until his death. The role that followed WKRP most significantly was Charlie Moore in Head of the Class, a part that gave him a different kind of audience across a different decade, while confirming he could anchor a series on his own terms. He worked steadily through television guest appearances until 2018, with Fresh Off the Boat among his final credits. Howard Hesseman passed away on January 29, 2022, at 81 years old. Number 2. Loni Anderson as Jennifer Marlowe, the brilliantly capable receptionist whose warmth, intelligence, and absolute command of every room she walked into made her one of the most subversive characters on network television at a time when the network had no idea it was airing anything subversive at all. 33 years old at the premiere, she built Jennifer into something that challenged every assumption the audience brought to her appearance, and audiences responded so enthusiastically that her face became one of the most recognizable on American television within the show's first season. She would have been 80 in 2026, having passed away on August 3, 2025, at 79 years old. 4 marriages make up her personal history, with her third to Burt Reynolds from 1988 to 1994, on generating tabloid coverage that continued well past the divorce itself. In her 1995 memoir, she alleged Reynolds had been physically abusive during their marriage, an account he disputed publicly. She eventually found stability with musician Bob Flick, whom she married in 2008 and remained with until her death. Her later career included the sitcom Nurses and various television movies, with a 2023 holiday film called Ladies of the 80s, A Diva's Christmas among her final screen appearances, a fitting last credit for someone whose greatest role was making everyone in the room underestimate her. Number 3. Gary Sandy as Andy Travis, the new program director whose arrival at WKRP set the entire series in motion, and whose steady, occasionally exasperated presence gave the ensemble a center to build its chaos around across all 4 seasons. At 32 when the show launched, he turned 80 in 2026, a milestone his career has reached while staying connected to the performance world through regional theater, rather than chasing a Hollywood profile that might have looked very different from what he actually built. During the show's run, he was famously linked romantically to co-star Loni Anderson, a behind-the-scenes connection that both have addressed with varying degrees of directness in interviews across the years since. Beyond that, his personal life has stayed almost entirely out of the public record, a deliberate distance from the spotlight that the show itself never required him to maintain. In 2025, he was honored as a giant of broadcasting by the Library of American Broadcasting Foundation, a recognition of what WKRP contributed to the medium rather than just what it contributed to his resume. He also appeared recently in the holiday special A Very Carol on Christmas, confirming he has never fully stepped away from performing. Number 4. Gordon Jump as Arthur Carlson, the well-meaning, perpetually overwhelmed station manager known to everyone at WKRP simply as the big guy, whose combination of authority and incompetence made him one of the great comic archetypes of late 1970s television. 46 years old at the premiere, he arrived with decades of television and stage work behind him, and gave Carlson a genuine warmth that prevented the character from ever becoming purely a figure of ridicule, no matter how spectacularly his decisions unraveled. He was married twice, first to a wife with whom he had 4 children, and later to Betty Sue McKeever from 1993 until his death. The role that introduced him to the widest possible audience outside WKRP came not from another acting job, but from a commercial campaign. He played the Maytag repairman for 14 years, an advertising run so long and so culturally embedded that many viewers knew his face primarily through appliance commercials rather than a Cincinnati radio station. He continued guest starring in productions including Seinfeld before stepping back from the industry in his final years. Gordon Jump passed away on September 22, 2003, at 71 years old. Number 5. Carol Bruce as Lillian Carlson, Arthur's formidable mother, whose 10 episodes across 3 seasons gave the station managers perpetual anxiety, a biographical explanation that made everything else about him suddenly make perfect sense. Born Shirley Levy, she joined the cast in 1979 at 59 years old, carrying Broadway credentials that stretched back to the 1940s, and a Tony nomination that reflected a stage career serious enough to make her television appearances feel like visits from a different era of the entertainment world entirely. Her marriage to Milton Nathanson produced a daughter named Julie and grandchildren who survived her. The guest work she did across the final decades of her career included appearances on The Golden Girls and Doogie Howser, MD, productions that introduced her face to audiences who had never seen her on a Broadway stage, and her final acting credit arrived in the series That's Life in 2000, before she stepped back from the industry entirely. Carol Bruce passed away on October 9, 2007, at 87 years old, closing out a professional life that had begun before most of her WKRP castmates were born. Number 6. Richard Sanders as Les Nessman, the painfully earnest, accident-prone news director whose invisible office walls, Buckeye News Hawk Award, and absolute commitment to his own dignity in the face of constant humiliation made him one of the most beloved comic creations of the entire series. 38 years old at the premiere, he is 85 today, making him one of the last surviving members of the original cast. He married script supervisor and writer Marilyn Marco, a partnership built inside the industry he spent his career working within. A classically trained actor, he brought a technical precision to Les Nessman's obliviousness that prevented the character from ever becoming cheap or mean-spirited, which is a harder balance to maintain across 89 episodes than it sounds. He reprised the role in the new WKRP in Cincinnati from 1991 to 1993, returning to Les with the same commitment he had brought the first time around, and appeared in the 2000 film Men of Honor before eventually stepping away from the industry entirely. He has lived quietly in Washington state for many years, a deliberate distance from the professional world that gave him one of the most memorable characters in American sitcom history. Number 7. Frank Bonner as Herb Tarlek, the loud, plaid-suited, relentlessly self-confident sales manager whose complete inability to read a room combined with an absolute certainty that he was the most charming person in it gave every scene he appeared in an unpredictability that never wore out its welcome. Born Frank Woodrow Bors Jr., he was 36 at the premiere and brought an almost athletic physicality to Herb that became even more notable given what happened in 1979. A parasailing accident mid-series caused his parachute to collapse, dropping him 20 feet and leaving him on crutches for subsequent episodes, an injury the production simply worked around rather than letting it derail the season. 5 marriages filled his personal biography, ending finally with a return to his former high school sweetheart, Gail Hardage, whom he married in 2006 and remained with until his death. The career he built behind the camera after WKRP ended was substantial, with directing credits on Who's the Boss, Head of the Class, and City Guys among a long list of television productions he helped shape, without ever appearing in front of their cameras. Frank Bonner passed away on June 16, 2021, at 79 years old. Number 8. Alan Ann McCleary as Carmen Carlson, Arthur's wife, whose 4 episodes across the show's run gave the station manager's domestic life a face, and confirmed that the chaos he presided over at WKRP was not something he had managed to leave entirely at the office. She joined the cast in 1979 at 52 years old, arriving with a reputation built across decades of musical theater that placed her firmly in the golden era of Broadway performance. The range she brought to that stage career, moving between singing, dancing, and dramatic acting with equal fluency, made her a genuine triple threat at a time when that phrase actually meant something specific about the demands being placed on a performer. Her marriage to actor George Gaines, recognized by later generations primarily as the endlessly confused Henry Warnemont from Punky Brewster, lasted from 1953 until his death in 2016, a partnership of more than 6 decades across 2 careers that never stopped running simultaneously. They had 2 children together. She retired from acting in 1993 after credits that included They Shoot Horses, Don't They, and All the President's Men. 2 films separated by nearly a decade that together reflect the breadth of what she could do when the material was worthy of her attention. Alan Ann McClary passed away on May 21, 2018, at 91 years old. She would have been 99 in 2026. Number 9. Tim Reid as Venus Flytrap, the Cool. Our philosophical disc jockey, whose 87 episodes brought a different kind of intelligence to the WKRP airwaves, and whose presence gave the show a voice that the rest of the ensemble could not have generated on its own. 33 years old at the premiere, he is 81 today and has spent the decades since WKRP building something that extends well beyond his own performing career. He has been married to actress Daphne Maxwell Reid, recognized by millions as the second Vivian Banks in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Since 1982, a partnership now past the 4-decade mark that has become one of the entertainment industry's more quietly enduring unions. 2 children from a previous marriage to Rita Sykes predate that partnership. The creative work that followed WKRP moved steadily between performing and producing, with Simon & Simon, Sister Sister, and the critically admired dramedy Frank's Place among his most significant post-Cincinnati contributions to American television. Today, his most sustained commitment is the Legacy Media Institute, a non-profit he founded to train the next generation of filmmakers, a project that reflects a long-standing conviction that the industry's future depends on who gets access to its tools and knowledge. Number 10. Sam Anderson as Mason Noble, one of several characters he played across 4 guest appearances between 1979 and 1981 that gave him an early foothold in exactly the kind of television work that would eventually define the longest and most productive stretch of his career. 34 years old during his first appearance on the show, he is 81 today and represents one of those character actors whose face became more familiar to television audiences with each passing decade rather than less. The role that introduced him most widely came years later as Bernard Nadler across 6 seasons of Lost, a performance that required him to locate the emotional truth inside a science fiction mythology that was asking enormous things of its entire cast. His appearance in the 2022 film Where the Crawdads Sing added a major theatrical credit to a resume already built from decades of consistent, reliable work across some of American television's most ambitious productions. He married Barbara Anderson in 1985. Yet the same year his career was beginning its long climb through the character work that would eventually make his name genuinely recognizable to audiences who had no memory of a Cincinnati radio station from the late 1970s. Number 11. Edie McClurg as Lucille Tarlek, Herb's wife, whose 3 episodes gave the show's most relentlessly self-assured character a domestic mirror that reflected everything his obliviousness looked like from the other side of the marriage. Born Edith Marie McClurg, she was between 28 and 29 during her guest appearances and is 80 today. The cheerful Midwestern energy she brought to Lucille was not a departure from anything she was doing elsewhere in her career, but rather a concentrated version of the comic voice she had been developing across radio, television, and film simultaneously. She never married and has no children. The voice acting career that became her most sustained professional chapter included work in Disney's Cars and Frozen franchises, productions that placed her inside 2 of the most commercially successful animation brands of the past 2 decades. The personal news surrounding her later years has been considerably more difficult. In 2019, family and friends filed for a conservatorship after revealing she was battling dementia. And in 2022, court documents filed by her conservator alleged she had been the victim of elder abuse by someone who had moved into her home and attempted to marry her while she lacked the legal capacity to consent. A situation that drew significant public attention and concern from the fan community that had followed her work for decades. Number 12. Hamilton Camp as Dell Murdoch, the recurring presence across 3 episodes spread between 1978 and 1981, whose face and voice were already familiar to American audiences through a folk music career and a television history that had been running for nearly 2 decades before he ever walked through the WKRP door. Born Robin S. Camp, he was between 43 and 46 during his appearances on the show, and brought the ease of a performer who had long since stopped being intimidated by cameras or audiences to every scene he occupied. His marriage to Rasjada Lisa Jovita Cheese began in 1961 and lasted until her death in 2002. A partnership of more than 4 decades that produced 6 children across a shared life built entirely outside the Hollywood spotlight, his career required him to inhabit professionally. The work never stopped across those same decades. He appeared in Desperate Housewives in 2005 in what became his final guest role, and a film called Hard 4 was released posthumously after his death, a last credit that arrived after the man himself was no longer around to see it. Hamilton Camp passed away on October 2, 2005, at 70 years old. Number 13, Ian Wolfe as Hirsch, a recurring presence across 4 episodes during the show's final season, whose appearance on the WKRP cast list represents one small entry in a screen career so vast and so long that it belongs in an entirely different conversation about what sustained professional commitment to a craft actually looks like across a human lifetime. He was between 85 and 86 years old during his appearances in 1981 and 1982, which means he was walking onto that set with more than 5 decades of film and television work already behind him, and still finding new productions willing to put him in front of a camera. Over 400 screen credits accumulated across 7 decades of continuous working, a number that reflects not a performer chasing fame but one who simply never stopped showing up. He married Elizabeth Schroeder in 1924, and they remained together for 68 years. A marriage that outlasted virtually every other professional and personal arrangement in his enormously long life until his death ended it. His final screen credit came in Dick Tracy in 1990, playing a forger, a last appearance that arrived nearly 60 years after his first. Ian Wolfe passed away on January 23, 1992, at 95 years old. Number 14, Jan Smithers as Bailey Quarters, the quietly sharp, deeply competent producer whose 86 episodes across all 4 seasons made her the most underestimated person in the WKRP building, which was precisely the point, and whose gradual emergence from behind that understated exterior gave the show some of its most satisfying character development across its entire run. 29 years old when the show premiered, she is 76 today. Before WKRP, she had appeared on the cover of Newsweek at 17, following a motorcycle accident that left visible scars, a moment of public attention that preceded her acting career rather than resulting from it, and gave her a complicated early relationship with being looked at that informed everything Bailey Quarters represented on screen. Her first marriage to Kip Whitman in 1971 lasted barely a year. Her second marriage, to actor James Brolin in 1986, was the one that drew significant public attention, a high-profile pairing that produced a daughter named Molly, before ending in divorce in 1995. Brolin later married Barbra Streisand in 1998, and the divergence between those two post-divorce paths says something about the deliberate distance Jan chose to put between herself and the industry after stepping away from acting in 1987. She has dedicated the years since to spiritual and environmental causes, surfacing occasionally at fan conventions to celebrate a show whose audience has never stopped caring about what happened inside that Cincinnati radio station, and about the quietly brilliant woman who held it together from behind the scenes.